Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Hot Mess Life Coach, Season 2, Episode 12, the Season 2 finale. I am your host, Brian Hogan, both a hot mess and a life coach, because yes, that is too allowed. I help people learn how to find and trust their own inner wisdom so that they always know what to do. And this is the show for people trying to get it together while the world seems to be falling apart. And what I want to talk to you today about is the upside of self-doubt, because there is one. And in our culture, we have sort of looked at anything quote unquote negative as problematic or something to be overcome or something to be blown to smithereens or decimated or annihilated, when the truth is sometimes it's important to embrace those things, to lean in and see what we can learn from the things that culture calls bad or wrong. Self-doubt being one of them. In fact, there's new research coming out of MIT that shows all kinds of amazing benefits of self-doubt, which I'm going to get into in a moment. So self-doubt is not about a lack of confidence. It's about a lack of arrogance. Self-doubt creates wiggle room in our psyche for humility and for community. Total self-confidence seems like it might be a good thing, but like all things in life, balance is the key here. If all you have is self-confidence, you might never ask for help, even at times when asking for a bit of help could make your life a lot easier. If you have total self-confidence, you might object or a presentation or a creative endeavor because of certainty that the situation is going to go your way. Self-doubt, while it can easily get out of hand, does have an upside. The upside to self-doubt is that you end up not relying only on yourself. It can help you create better work. It can help you become more engaged. It can help you be motivated. There's an author named Alice Boyles, PhD, and she has a book called The Healthy Mind Toolkit. And she writes this in it: I need periods of self-confidence and self-doubt to create my best work. Both of these states help me in different ways. Sometimes I need confidence to crank out work or take charge of a situation. On the flip side, sometimes I need self-doubt to propel me to examine where I might have blind spots and to motivate the effort involved in correcting these blind spots. So there was this study done recently by an assistant professor at MIT, and it was discovered that those with imposter syndrome, we're going to call them the imposters, in an effort to overcompensate for their self-doubt, they far surpassed their non-imposter peers, their self-confident peers, on many measures of competence. This was done using assessment tools to measure people's level of imposter syndrome or level of self-doubt prior to then the studies being done, so they could tell which category people were in, whether they were in the imposter category or whether they were in the self-confident category. In other parts of the studies, sometimes people would go into a sort of fixed, contrived situation, and some people went in just under regular circumstances, and other people would go in having been induced to have self-doubt or have imposter syndrome by a series of thoughts or prompts that they were subjected to prior. So in both situations, whether it was an assessment or whether you were prompted to have doubt in yourself, the doubt had all kinds of positive benefits on people's competence and people's performance. So here's how it works. We think we need to overcome or resist feelings of anxiety. But as I was talking about at the very beginning, what if instead we leaned into them and we embraced them? What might that do? Well, for the imposters in the MIT study, it led to them outperforming their non-imposter peers in interpersonal skills. Self-doubt had become a tangible asset, not just a theoretical one. Something called the imposter cycle. Like, according to the International Journal of Behavioral Science, more than 70% of people are affected by workplace imposter thoughts. That's a lot of people. That's like most people. And this happened, like, at some point in our lives, this happens to us. And while specific workplace pressure points vary across careers, the internal symptoms typically remain the same. Here they are. Imposters have perfectionist tendencies. They harboring a secret need to be the very best at what they do. When they're unable to fulfill their perfectionist goals, imposters often feel overwhelmed, disappointed, and they overgeneralize themselves as failures. A cycle emerges then in the workplace that causes imposters to forbid themselves from accepting positive feedback on their work. That's part of our negativity bias. When we're so convinced that what's happening to us is either dumb luck or was too hard, then we're not going to be able to accept the positive feedback that we did a good job. So if anxiety about underperforming leads the imposters to over-prepare for a presentation, for example, even if the presentation is successful, they're going to feel like they expended too much effort in the process and that accomplishing the thing should have been easier. On the other hand, if an imposter procrastinates and waits to the last minute on an assignment and they still manage to hand it in on time, then they'll attribute their success to luck rather than their own ability, because we're programmed by our brain to only, it has a filter and it filters out things that don't align with our beliefs. And so if our beliefs are that we're an imposter, then when things happen that would prove our beliefs false, we're not going to see them as proving our beliefs false. We're going to see them as dumb luck. Or when things would happen that would prove our beliefs true, we're not going to see them as coincidental. We're going to see them as hard and fast. In the MIT report, Professor Tufik discusses the idea that there is a wide gap between how you see your own confidence versus how it actually is. So among investment bankers, for example, it was discovered that managers described the imposters as being more interpersonally effective and better collaborators than their more self-confident peers. So that's a pretty amazing situation right there. Among the investment bankers, the managers would describe those who had been assessed to have imposter syndrome, and the managers didn't know this. It was like a double blind kind of thing. Like people were given assessments, and then this group ended up. These were the imposters. This was the group that was self-confident. The managers, looking in on the group, not knowing which was which, and would do independent assessments of the people, would rate the investment bankers who we now knew were imposters and say they're better collaborators, they're more interpersonally effective, like they're better and better at their jobs. Another similar study was done among medical students who were on their way to clinical rotations. Like that means they were in the hospitals and they were seeing patients all the time already, even though they were still students. So it was discovered in this part of the study that the imposters had better bedside manner. They were more empathic, more empathetic. They were better listeners, and they asked better questions. They also held more consistent eye contact, and they were more affirming with their patients. So, all around more loving. This was caused by, or at least enhanced by, self-doubt, the upside of self-doubt. According to Tufik, this is the architect of the study, a lot of people sort of paint imposter syndrome as this thing that's holding you back. So we would expect, for example, that maybe you'd be a poor performer. But there's actually no significant difference in competence between those to have imposter thoughts and are not. What the research does so far suggest is that the perceived competence gap, the idea that imposters are masquerading as someone more capable than they really are, may not be negatively affecting the quality of their work after all. And if their self-doubt leads them to put extra effort into their interpersonal connections, it may even help them outperform their non-imposter colleagues. So competence levels are the same between imposters and non-imposters. However, imposters end up having better interpersonal skills. They're better collaborators. They're more empathetic. They're more loving. They're more kind. And so their self-doubt, because they believe they're frauds, it gives them this extra edge. So that's the upside of self-doubt. So now we want to think about how can we embrace self-doubt? How can we drop the cultural agenda to overcome it, to blow it to smithereens, to say it's no good, it's bad, it's wrong, and we have to get rid of it, and instead lean into it and say, what is this doing here? What could this self-doubt be trying to teach me? What could be the gift inside of it for me? And so imposter syndrome has been studied for decades, but there's very little research or information that emerges in terms of its implications for success. So these new findings from MIT are pretty groundbreaking because it was assumed before this that imposter syndrome was debilitating. Author Adam Grant, who's an organizational psychologist and a professor at the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania, he says this about the MIT research. Her research is breaking new ground in highlighting that imposter thoughts can be a source of fuel. It can motivate us to work harder to prove ourselves and work smarter to fill gaps in our knowledge and skills. So here we can see that self-doubt is actually an engine helping drive people to improve their skills. So there's a number of existing recommendations to help people try to overcome their imposter feelings, but what we're starting to see is that the real goal should be to revise the assumption that imposter syndrome is purely and only detrimental, that self-doubt is only problematic. It's true that some people carry a chronic belief that they're frauds, but for most of us, it manifests as ordinary doubts about whether we're up to the challenges that we're confronted with. So this self-skepticism that we have, it can induce stress, fear, and lower self-confidence. But what the MIT research is showing us is that those doubts are normal and they can even be healthy and even be beneficial. Instead of holding us back, push us forward. Self-doubt can be a rocket fuel that pushes forward. And in all of the components of the study done at MIT, it showed that the people who struggled with the thoughts about being an imposter actually outperformed their colleagues on many interpersonal measures. So, there's an entrepreneur and professor of marketing at New York University. His name is Scott Galloway. And he talks about like the best course of action for workers hoping to harness this potential is to step past the negative component, the negative emotional component of imposter syndrome, and to lean further into the imposter feelings. So focusing in on the perceived competence gap between you and your peers and putting your energy towards closing it is actually what could give you the edge you're looking for. He says it like this: in those moments where you feel like an imposter, you realize, I have something to prove. So you're not complacent. So you become more active. That's that fuel thing again. So this is like a moment where confident humility can help us to recognize how little we know and yet how strong our capability to learn is. So I struggled with self-doubt for a long time in my life. I still do. I mean, I have lots of areas where I struggle with self-doubt. I'm a filmmaker, make films. I send them around to film festivals. I'm still trying to get that one that's going to break into Sundance and like put me on the map there. And like, until that happens, there are times that I'm making my projects and I'm like, what am I doing? What is the point of this? How is this going to help my career? How is this going to help my life? That self-doubt, though, pushes me to make sure that I have a story well told, that I have a film that's well lit, that's well acted, that the script is well structured, that we spend enough time producing it and shooting it and editing it and doing all the post-production work on it to make it good and excellent. That push comes to me from self-doubt because it won't allow me to be complacent. So think about areas in your life where you're really trying to do a good job, or you really want to do a good job, but you doubt yourself and you don't believe it's possible, or you don't believe you can. And then just remember this. Remember that self-doubt, it can be something that you get caught up in emotionally and it can pull you off course. Or it can be something that you say, hey, this can be fuel. This can push me to learn. This can push me to grow. This can push me to a new mindset, to a new way of looking at the gap, the competence gap, the things I need to learn. Marcus Aurelius is an ancient philosopher, and he said, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. You've all heard the idea that the obstacle is the path. So when we're faced with this overbearing doubt, it will help push us in a direction. It'll help us to conquer our fear. which leads to the positive aspect of self-doubt. And there's this pain that accompanies that feeling, and it's like a growth pain. So instead of seeing it as bad, it's not a bad situation. You can use the difficulty to see the other side of the challenge, to imagine who you will become on the other side of your self-doubt. I want to give you guys an exercise. It's called directed abstraction, and it's a writing exercise. And there's just 2 short steps to this, but this is something you can do, and it will help you internalize and generalize your success and your ability to be good at something, and it will ground into your psyche the things that you're good at so that you'll remember them going forward. So it'll be easier for you to have agency over the things that you're good at. So this is a super short writing exercise that anyone can do at any time. Step 1 is to contemplate in your life for a few minutes. Well, step 1 is always to get calm. It's always going to be to calm down. So if you're in an agitated state before you do this exercise, take some deep breaths, communicate with your inner child, sit, relax, drop your shoulders, unclench your jaw, unfurrow your brow. Do what you can to get calm. From a calm place, or as calm a place as you can be in, then what you want to do is any win. Find anything in your life, whether it's recent or from the distant past, that went well, that you can look at and say objectively, that was successful. That was because of me, this went well. I did this, I did a good job at this. Once you find a situation where you have that, you'll write this statement out. I was able to insert successful situation, like I was able to get that promotion. I was able to finish that job. I was able to make that movie. I was able to, whatever it is, I was able to, successful situation, because I am blank. And then you spend 3 minutes filling in the blank with all of the things that you are that made you capable, ready, competent to achieve the successful situation that you achieved. The other nuance to this is that you could change I am to I did. So it would be, I was able to successful experience because I did. So it can be related to qualities of who you are or actions that you took. In fact, sometimes it might be worth it to do the exercise both ways, so that what you're doing is pulling out into your self-awareness all the qualities that you have about you, who you are, that made it helpful and able for you to achieve the successful situation. And then all of the actions that you took, the things that you did that helped the successful situation to come about, that made you more able to handle that successful situation. So by doing this writing exercise, if you do both prompts, it should take you less than 10 minutes. So you just calm down, focus on a win, and then you write this out. I was able to achieve my goal because I am. I was able to be successful at this situation because I am. I was able to achieve my goal because I did. I was able to be successful at this situation because I did. And you write it out for 3 minutes. And you just see what comes to you, and you don't censor it. You don't lie. You don't make anything up. You don't exaggerate. You just fill in the blank with the things that are really true about you. And then you contemplate those. That's the final step. You contemplate what you wrote. You read it over and you let it sink in. And this exercise has been studied, and it has been shown to have lasting effects on people's psychology, because it helps them internalize and generalize the qualities they have that make them successful or able to do something good, to do something hard. So by taking this writing exercise in and doing it, you're going to actually create a situation where your psyche starts to change its belief system in a more long-term way and start to believe and see more clearly, this is something I'm good at. This is something I'm able to do. This is something I achieved, which means there's no reason I can't achieve this other something. So this is a way of expanding a little bit beyond your self-doubt, not overcoming your self-doubt, not trying to blow your self-doubt to smithereens, because self-doubt has this upside. Self-doubt pushes us to grow. It pushes us to be successful. It pushes us to, in the end, outperform our totally self-confident peers on many, many measures in terms of interpersonal skills, kindness, compassion, and empathy, which are the qualities that the world needs now more than ever before. We don't need like top-notch success that leads to ulcers and all that kind of thing. We need kindness, we need compassion, we need harmony. And if self-doubt is going to help push us there, then that's a huge upside to self-doubt. So embrace your doubt and then do this directed abstraction writing exercise and see exactly the qualities that you have in you that can push you forward into doing hard things. So if there's any questions or anyone has any questions about anything, feel free to throw those in the chat. I just want to remind everybody that self-doubt is not something that needs to be overcome. It is something that needs to be embraced and integrated because it has many, many benefits, not just for you, but also for the people you serve and for the society in which you are a part. So that's all I have for you today. If you have any questions, throw them in the chat now. Otherwise, I just want to say thank you for tuning in from the future, from the present, or if you're listening to this on the podcast, I really appreciate you. If you know of anyone who might benefit from what you heard here today, then please share this video, tag them, like it, tweet it. And if you want to learn more about me and what I do, you can visit my website at thebrianhogan.com for more information or to apply for coaching. In the meantime, I will see you all in 2 weeks. Next week, there is no Hot Mess Life Coach, but I will be back in 2 weeks for Season 3, Episode 1 on Thursday, April 6th at 10:30 a.m. Until then, be hot, be messy, and be blessed. Much love. Thank you.